Corey, Luke, may the 4th be with you guys.
May the 4th be with you.
And also with you.
May the 4th of others be with you always.
Oh, there we go. So we're going to play some Star Wars Battlefront on this wonderful holiday, May the 4th. We've tried this a couple times. Yeah, maybe. There might be some dark side technical difficulties infecting this right now. So, who the heck knows?
One with the 4th.
And the 4th is with me. So, okay, because you said that, we're going to go ahead and do some Rogue One Scarif. Let's do this mode. Let's do this, wait a minute. Infiltration. That's the Rogue One mode. It's pretty great. So if this can still keep going, then it'll show off one of the cooler modes about this game. Which again, some of the best content locked behind the DLC wall. But because I'm a Star Wars freak, I paid for it. So, oh, we're on the Imperials. Boo! I like being the rebels on this mode. That's okay. Infiltration. So I think I've only done this mode like a couple times, but basically what happens here is there's a space battle where you have to escort the correct fighter in, and then you land and you have to secure the points, and then something else. I don't know. I don't really remember, but we'll find out. We'll see what happens here. Do we have an update at all about whether or not we're online here?
I'm seeing a feed.
Oh yeah, I've got it too. All right. Well, maybe my PlayStation was just infected by the dark side. Who knows?
Probably.
Yeah, that's probably it.
The 4th is strong with this.
The approach. All right, yeah, space battle time. All right, here we go.
We are under rebel attack and the shield gate is open. Target the U-wing.
See, I do wish that this part was playable in VR, like all of the space parts.
Yeah, I remember in Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PlayStation 2, when you did a space battle, they'd stick you out in the cockpit, or in the capital ship.
Yeah.
And like you would have to run to the docking bay where there'd be a bunch of ships, and you'd pick one of them. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah, the original Battlefront games were phenomenal, and there's so much potential. I mean, I think this is a great game now. Like, for people who jump in now, like, and can get, like, the Ultimate Edition or whatever that has all the DLC content, like, this is a very, very, very good multiplayer game, you know? But,
yes,
as we said before, this game made a lot of mistakes at the beginning with content drought, the fact that all the best content was behind the DLC. Oh, I just died. You know, hopefully that will be rectified in the next game.
It's a good thing they got it up to snuff just in time to put out a new game.
Yeah, no, for sure. But hey, this game is also, like, you can get this game for, well, I guess you can get the Ultimate Edition for like 20 or something, 20 or 30. Oh.
yeah. When I played the beta, I was like, oh, this is cool, and then it turned out to be half the game. Oh.
Yeah.
It's just, that's a problem.
It's really unfortunate,
And,
yeah.
so did they suffer did they suffer from sales? Is that why they might be not?
I don't know if they suffered for sales. I think this game sold really well, but I think they had like pretty massive player drop off.
Yeah, internet reaction was big.
Yeah, and like, you know, you fracture your player base whenever all your stuff is like DLC based, you know, because not everybody's gonna buy it, even people who enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never quite a good idea.
We cannot let them through the shield gate. Threat neutralized.
Oh man, I'm getting outshot,
So-
but we're also doing a good job defending this gate right now. We've got 4.5 minutes about. Oh no, we're not. Actually, they're about to take it. That's okay. I kind of want to keep going on the ground. I did not pay attention to my UI. Oh, I've ran into. didn't see that X-wing, just that dead X-wing just sitting there.
Are all of the space missions just fighter-to-fighter combat?
Oops.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So there's no, like, destroy the capital ships with a bomber?
No, there is a, oh, wait a minute, we got it. There's X-wing right here, we're gonna take that down. I don't get killed first. Oh, they're gonna get to that gate, huh? You can take down the Death Star, actually, on the Death Star DLC, which is wonderful.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so there's like a space battle. There's a space battle element to disable a Star Destroyer, and then you infiltrate the Death Star, and you have to escort R2-D2 across to somewhere, and then you actually make a trench run. And the trench run portion is really cool and hard. All right, looks like they got the gate.
You wing youngsters have blasted their way past the shield gate. Prepare the defenses.
That's okay. We get to see what more this map looks like. It's really cool. They did a great job with it, like they did with most of the maps here. So before the stream started, Corey and I were talking about the merits of the prequels, and
So you're done already.
so we actually had a pretty long discussion here. I believe that there is more merit to the prequels than anyone gives them credit for. And usually when people say the prequels suck or like they're bad, like other than like Anakin sucks or like CGI, like there's not a whole lot of like informed opinions about it that are more than just that. And because like it's become this thing where like the popular opinion is to say the prequels are bad, and so then that's just what people do, if that makes sense. Because I would say like for sure episode 2 is the most problematic, like almost entirely because of the Anakin and Padme segments. He like it's not written or performed well by either of them, and because it's a good chunk of the movie, like it's definitely not great. But that movie also has a really incredible battle sequence from the pit into like the beginning of the Clone Wars. You get to see a whole lot of, return to combat. You get to see a whole lot of the Jedi like doing their thing and like being action heroes that you've always heard about.
Whole lot is a strong term.
When was the last time you watched episode 2?
A long time ago.
Yeah, I mean you can go back and watch it now. Like there's like a large stretch of the end of that movie where there's like in the pit like tons of Jedi fighting the droids, and you know, it's the first time you finally get to see Mace Windu kind of let loose, even though like, you know, in episode 1 you basically only see the Jedi Masters sitting down, and so you now actually see, oh, this is why they're masters, this is why they're like respected, and this is like how they've got to be at this place. So you get to see that. It's the first time you get to see Yoda brandish a lightsaber, and that's an incredible moment by itself. Still gives me chills. You get to see Obi-Wan go on this investigation to find out more about the Clone Wars, and you get to see him square off against Jango Fett. That's really cool. The Kaminoans are really well-designed aliens, and the CGI for them still looks really good. Probably some of the best CGI in the prequels. So like, there's still a whole lot of good in episode 2, like more good in episode 2 than bad, even though the bad is bad, if that makes sense. And so like, I just feel like people don't want to talk about the merits. They only want to talk about why the prequels suck, or like why episode 2 is bad. But there's actually a lot of merit there.
Yeah. You know, if the most important thing to you
If you
about
say so.
I mean, I guess you could
Like,
just
if
yeah.
if you're super into the universe and you're willing to sit through 2 hours of not interesting storytelling just for those elements of the universe, then that's fine. Though you could consider those merits. But as a film, it's a bad movie.
I feel like so the not interesting storytelling is like, I mean, you could say that that's just a difference of opinion, right? So like, you know, the stuff with Obi-Wan doing his investigation is really interesting to me and like done well. Like, I mean, like Ewan McGregor is a good actor and like he performs that well. And there's enough like elements there of like the mystery and like understanding like, oh, like there's this whole clone army and like the Jedi don't know about this, and also like let's talk about the Jedi and how like they're starting to be a little bit arrogant and like they're starting to be a little bit like, you know, they're not willing to kind of see that something is wrong, and like there's that whole kind of subplot. So like there's interesting moments. Like if 2 hours of the movie was anime, I did it again, anime, Anakin and Padme,
Anakin.
then yeah, the movie's a colossal failure. But you know, there's a lot of like intrigue happening. Of like, wait a minute, things are not as good as like the Jedi want to say that they are. But like, again, difference of opinion. You could also say that that's not good if like, you know, you're not into that. And that's fine. And people, I think, could say that's just not it for me. But that's not what people do. Like, people say the prequels suck and it's bad. And it's like, well, that's not good enough for me when there are some like legitimately good things happening.
If you're so invested into the whole lore and universe of Star Wars, like you are, you're someone who will seek out extended universe material, then I can see why you would appreciate the prequels more, because the world building and the lore building is pretty good in the prequels, and they even took it a lot further with things like the Clone War spin-off series, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And like the Knights of the Old Republic with the Jedi Council concept. So there's like a lot of good lore and world building there, and a lot of really good stuff for extended universe. But if you're just going in as a guy who watches only the main Star Wars stuff, doesn't care about the lore as much, doesn't watch any of the spin-off stuff, doesn't play the games, then you're going to be more focused on Padme and Anakin talking about sand being rough and coarse and getting everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is really
it's the worst line in most movies, and certainly in the Star Wars movies, but like beyond that. It's like one of the worst lines ever.
Yes.
And so like, yeah, that's unfortunate. Okay, so I guess we're gonna do this mission.
The action is good. I've always loved the lore of Star Wars. So like when Yoda takes out his lightsaber for the first time, seeing that in the theaters as a kid was a special moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then again, I was a kid too. But
that's something to take into consideration.
Well, I mean, like that still is good for me now. Like just that whole the way that they first start off with, like kind of playing back and forth of like, oh, you can do this, okay, let me do this real quick, and like this escalation of force powers, and then you know you see Count Dooku is like, oh, which by the way, Christopher Lee as Count Dooku is wonderful, but nobody talks about his performance either. And like,
well, how good of a character is Count Dooku himself, though?
Yeah.
But the performance.
If you watch the Clone Wars, he's a great character. If you like the series, Clone Wars, great character.
I mean, like he
just
doesn't
watching
have
Episode 2.
That's one of the problems with the main movies. Is like just the lore. You really need to watch the supplementary stuff to really feel the enrichment of it. Because like Count Dooku, General Grievous, Qui-Gon Jinn is a really interesting Jedi, but most of the stuff that's interesting about him needs to be found in outside material about like his philosophies and just the history of the Jedi Council. That's the problem. It's both a world, but at the same time they're blockbuster movies.
Yeah, it's
so
kind of like
that's kind of what we're trying to reconcile here.
Yeah, it's what's your expectations? You know, because some people want to say, and it's like, you know, none of the Star Wars movies are like Oscar-winning, you know, performance and like deep drama.
Sure, yeah.
Like, and so you know, it's like, okay, yeah. On the one hand, like none of them have like wonderful character development, and like if you're looking for that, then like yeah, maybe Star Wars movies aren't like for you specifically. You know, like, but if you look at like if you look at what is there, like the lines that are given, the writing that is given, like the situations that the actors are put in, like they're still good performances for what is there. You know, like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan is phenomenal. Like that was great casting, and he kills it in all three of those movies. And like Christopher Lee is like never going to be bad. He's always good. Like regardless of what you give him, like he's always good. So like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you could say maybe Count Dooku wasn't as developed of a character, but what's there isn't bad. You know what I mean? Like it's like
the performance is not bad.
Exactly, and that's yeah, and like that is worth talking about as something that is a merit, is that these performances
but at the same time,
are good, and nobody wants to talk about that.
Just if an actor is making a silk purse out of a pig's ear, then like,
well, I mean,
it's gonna go through.
But then the conversation is different. Is then so performances is just discounted if like what's there isn't good, and like I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there can be good performances with bad writing or bad situations or lacking of character development. So like that just kind of becomes this different idea of like, okay, like if the writing isn't good but the performance is good, but then the performance that can't matter if the writing's bad. It's like, so that's just a different conversation entirely. And like again, my whole point with this is that like it's not that these movies are perfect. Episode 2 is not wonderful compared to the rest of them especially. But what my point is that there is still a lot of merit that just gets totally overlooked because the like prevailing conversation about the prequels is that they're bad and they're terrible, and that's like where it is, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Y'all follow where I'm coming from?
You're just lashing back against the
yeah, because
circle jerk and like the overall war against George Lucas. Okay, yeah, I understand, but it's hard to. I'm trying to understand it from the point of well, even the hardcore fans, like some of the hardcore fans, are still on that train too. So I'm trying to really think about it without bias here.
Yeah.
And like, if you have to sit through long periods of Anakin and Padme acting like fools, saying stupid shit, and not even acting well doing it, then like it. How much of a movie can you allow to be ruined before you say the movie's ruined?
And I would say because the majority of the movie is not Anakin and Padme, like, I don't see how you can say the movie is ruined. Like, the movie can't be ruined when it's also, like, you have this giant climax at the end. Like, you have great performances by Christopher Lee, Ewan McGregor. Like, you have some interesting side plot stuff going on with the Jedi and, like, with the Clone Wars stuff. And again, the action is top notch, and that's always a strength of all the Star Wars movies. So, like, you have one section that's very not good, but then you have multiple sections that are actually very good. So, like, it just, again, it's an opinion thing, and I understand, like, even where I'm coming from is a lot of opinion, but, like, it's weird to me that for these movies specifically also, it's like none of the good, like it's just like always, it's just all overlooked. Like it's all or nothing, it's like well, because this was bad, this whole movie is bad and these movies are bad. And like I don't understand that logic. Like I think it's very okay to like acknowledge, hey, like this Anakin and Padme stuff is very bad, but I don't like. There's still a lot of good, and that's my whole point. It's like, and that's even just talking about episode 2, which is like easily the most problematic one.
I thought episode 1 was the most hated.
That gets
no.
I would say I think initially that had a lot of blowback, as probably from Jar Jar, but I think like as they've aged, I think it's kind of shifted rightfully so on episode 2.
And I can speak better to episode 1 because I was able to actually sit through that one recently. It's not good. Like,
okay, what? Yeah,
a cool,
sorry,
interesting character in Qui-Gon Jinn, but he doesn't do anything most of the time.
Define doesn't do anything.
Most of the movie is them sitting around talking on their communicators, plotting in like the desert. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. And so he makes an unethical deal with a slave trader, which leaves Anakin's mom in slavery. And then he watches a pod race. And he goes and talks to the council. And eventually you get an interesting fight at the end, but... Like...
But it also discounts like kind of the mentoring like presence that he is, and a lot of the like dialogue that he has is like, and like even the presence that he has for Obi-Wan, and like,
while Obi-Wan's sitting on the ship the whole time.
Define the whole time. and define the whole most of the movie as them sitting around on Tatooine. But I'm just being silly with you now. But so here's the things that episode 1 has that is like indefensibly good, right? Pod race scene. That is phenomenal. It's high action, it's intense, there's a lot of like different aliens, it's got everything that Star Wars like has in like kind of in a nutshell. Which is really good. Some of the best sound design work in all of the Star Wars movies is in the pod race scene. And also in general, and we had missed this too, is that the prequels definitely has some of the best music that John Williams has done for the Star Wars music, or for the Star Wars movies. I understand if people don't want to count that as part of the movie. I just can't go there. But
so, Duel of the Fates is one of the best songs ever written.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I don't remember anything.
Across the Stars, which is the love theme for Anakin and Padme, is the best part about Anakin and Padme. By far. And then the work that he does for the last like 20 to 30 minutes of episode 3 is like John Williams at his finest. Like, this is John Williams thinking like, this is the last time I'm doing Star Wars, you know, and like giving it his all, and like really just some of the best work, tying in a lot of the other themes. It's really, really, really amazing. Stuff that's just like very, very good. And again, that's another knock on episode 2, is that it has the least original music of any of the prequels, and a lot of reused music. But I mean, anyways, that is what it is. But anyways, back to episode 1. So like, has really great music, highlighted by Duel of the Fates. Oh yeah, we're gonna be the Emperor. Also, Anakin's theme, and this is something that like you like when you sit with the music, this is like kind of deep. Deep dive, not necessarily something that's like initially, like I wouldn't say it's like a strength of the movie that Anakin's theme is this, because like you kind of really have to deep dive with it to like understand, but there's some really interesting connections that his theme makes to further, like Darth Vader, Imperial March themes of that nature. But anyways, pod race, some of the most kinetic lightsaber battles in any of the movies. Has Darth Maul.
The lightsaber battle.
Well, even when at the beginning when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are fighting a lot of the droids, you see like Obi-Wan in particular. You see him doing a lot of like twirls, and they're really like just kind of spry, and like especially at the time, which like doesn't necessarily mean is a merit to the movie, but like at the time, the only time you've ever seen lightsaber battles, it's been kind of slow, and like now here are these really high energy moments, and they
the lightsaber battles in the prequels much better than the robotic lightsaber battles of the trilogy.
Yeah,
but there's like what, a 20-year difference between them.
Yeah. Right. So then,
but they do look good when they're good. They do look really good.
It's really great. And then yeah, like a lot of the visual like design of the world, and this is kind of going back to what you said, Corey, is that like the world building is really strong. Like Naboo is a really cool looking planet. Like the Gungan city looks awesome, and
But it doesn't have Gungans, that's a problem.
oh wait a minute, I hit the wrong button here.
Are you an angel?
To
So,
be
I
fair,
mean-
I'd probably ask the same question if I saw Natalie Portman in person. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm just got
That's just,
ganked.
that was probably just a unscripted moment and just happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I was saying earlier, I did not like the Anakin Jesus thing. That was pretty corny.
Yeah.
The Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The, so I think that's one of the most notorious moments. That and the midichlorians. I always hear people talk about the midichlorians.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, like the midichlorian thing for me doesn't bother me because like
Actually,
Oh.
sorry. Those two come under Jar Jar. That's the thing you hear the most about.
Yeah. Yeah. Midichlorians for me, it's like for people on both sides that are like midichlorians doesn't like take away from the mystery of the Force. It's like this idea that like science and faith can't exist. It's like, oh well, yeah. Like, so that's always been a strange thing for me of like, the midichlorians ruin the Force. It's this. I think also it's this
It's
hyperbole
kind of weird that
of like
everyone just stops talking about it, though.
Yeah, there is a lot of. That's a big problem with the prequels versus the trilogy. There's just this. I mean, some of it's explained because the Empire's taken over, but like, there is quite a tonal dissonance that even the fact that the Empire takes over can't explain away totally. Just like the fact that people have completely forgotten about Jedi in like a generation, that people have completely forgotten about some of the ancient technologies and. But I mean, that's one of the things you're gonna get when you make the first three after the last three.
yeah, that's just more of a
20 years
yeah.
later.
That's definitely just a hazard of that situation. But and then
So, okay.
episode 3 is like, I mean, yeah, I think that one's generally considered to be the most defendable, even by people who think the prequels are bad. So I don't really need to talk about that one as much, but
The sinister tone is done pretty well.
hmm
Episode 3.
and I even think
Although it's
visually,
fun to defend Episode 1 just for Darth Maul's sake.
oh yeah, well,
Darth
it's-
Maul is. Everyone talks about. Everyone gives Darth Maul the exception. And like you said, Qui-Gon Jinn is an interesting Jedi, but I wish, like Luke was talking about the unethical deal he made. The interesting thing about his character is that Qui-Gon Jinn differed with the Jedi Council in philosophies. That's why he wasn't part of it. And that's interesting, but they needed to go into that a bit more. Into the movie itself, not just the,
yeah,
not like some fan-made Star Wars book or a video game. The Clone Wars series, you've watched that, you said, Luke? At least some of
A
it.
few, a little bit of it, yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen that, Luke? Or Dave?
Yeah, I've seen the first season, and I'm like a couple episodes into the second season. It's pretty good, and I've heard that it just gets better as it goes on.
It is really good. It's
Yeah,
like I think maybe Lucas' vision for the first three movies just was not meant to be made into blockbuster movies, but something more like that.
well, I mean, I think that they it's really kind of unfortunate that like Anakin's performance in the Clone Wars is like way better than at least episode 2. I mean, I think it's probably on par with episode 3, but like it's just kind of really unfortunate that that's the way that goes.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Jar Jar?
And it,
So I know how I felt about Jar Jar when I was a kid, but I totally understand
Yeah.
like the I understand the negative things against him, and like I understand that there's also even like some sensitivity about like the racial undertones of his
Oh yeah,
character,
like
and like how
blackface.
right he's
Character.
kind of that typical like archetype of just like the goofy black man, and like I like that's definitely
Not this time.
like not okay. I don't know how much of that was like. I guess yeah, like I don't know how much of that was intentional, but that was obviously also all speculation. So like maybe it was, but so yeah, like I get all that. I don't think it's enough to ruin the movie, and I think that's another thing too is that it's part of my frustration with this is that it's such hyperbolic language, like about all this, you know, like it's and it's again, it's this whole idea that like Jar Jar's the worst. This is the worst thing, and like these are just terrible. And like
I
it's
think
one
the
thing
reason
if
you
people
get
would be
that-
like, hey, you know, like these like aren't quite as good as the originals, and like here's kind of why. But like you know, there's still some like decent stuff about them. You know, that's
But
kind of not what
here's
it
the,
is.
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. When you talk about a movie, like context is very important. And so, I agree wholeheartedly that there is like a very heavy, just kind of join the circle jerk kind of
Yeah,
thing there.
yeah.
But also, these aren't just movies. These are Star Wars movies. Star Wars is in the
Yeah.
middle of culture. Almost anybody you talk to can talk to you at least somewhat about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So those movies can't be judged on regular merit. So if someone like loves the original trilogy and then they watch the prequels and they're just not impressed, they're going to be more angered about it, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a fair point. And that, so I guess that does cloud a lot of the judgment and cloud a lot of the like language around it, and kind of the inability, I think, for people to acknowledge what's good. I also think there's another thing going on here is that like I think some people expect Star Wars to be this like overly masculine, like rah rah kind of thing. And I think that's why you see a lot of people that were like Rogue One's the best, you know, like really? No, like I think there's kind of that, you know, like of this whole idea that Star Wars has to be gritty and action and you know
But Rogue One was
masculine
really
lines, and I mean, oh, Rogue One's phenomenal. But it's this whole idea that like the prequels somehow aren't that, and like because Jar Jar,
No.
or like the prequels aren't that, or like kind of the same people that are like, oh, Return of the Jedi is the worst one because of the Ewoks. You know, it's like
Because
it's this
Ewoks,
whole
yeah.
thing. Yeah, it's of like that I just like really can't get behind because like it's not this kind of masculine power fantasy, and like even masculine, like I would say that people could look at Rogue One and be like, you know, that is a more masculine kind of Star Wars movie because like even though it has a female lead, like she's doing traditionally masculine stuff, like of like characterization. So like I think that's this other thing too that's added with it that just kind of gets under my skin. So it's like not only is it this like kind of hyperbolic like, oh, this is the worst, and like, oh, everybody's gonna say these are bad, and so everybody's saying they're bad, and like, oh, why are they bad? Oh, because Jar Jar is like terrible, or like, oh, the CGI is not great. They just need to be more like the originals, and like, oh, in the originals, which one's your favorite? Empire Strikes Back, because you know it's just so awesome, and like because it's dark and edgy. It's like it's that whole like almost like a drawn to death kind of argument of like, yeah, this is what Star Wars needs to be. Yeah, edginess. And there's like some of that around the like kind of the edges of the conversation too that leads its way in. That I'm just like, man,
You could create a
don't know.
better argument depending the tone of Empire Strikes Back than that, though.
The amount of times that I've heard that is just like unbelievable to me. You know, like it's just like okay. I would say Empire Strikes Back is great because it has the best script in any of the Star Wars movies by far. The writing in that is just like brilliance. It's like, especially like the back and forth between like Han and Leia, and it's very snappy in a good way, and obviously the tension that's built with Luke and Darth Vader there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that's why I think
Probably
has
has
a
the
lot of
best
merit.
pacing of the Star Wars
Yes,
movie,
that too. That too. Yeah.
That is true. That maybe that's a problem with the first three, some of the pacing. The third movie, like we said, is probably the best of the prequels. Would we all agree that it's the best
Oh
one?
yeah.
so.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it had the best tension, the best fight, well, some of the best fights. It had, the Sinister's tone was done well, and since you have the original three in mind, like, the ending of the third movie is really good, because it starts to kind of build up to what you already know, and you're like, oh, this is how it's all working out.
Yeah. And like it did what it had to do in a really great way. Like that had to tie all the links between the prequels and the original trilogy, and I mean it just really did it. And like if it doesn't do
The
that,
only
then
thing-
that's that's rough, and
Yeah.
it does it. So that's commendable,
Yeah, the
a
only
really
thing
hard
I've seen really criticized about the third movie is, well, I've seen a couple things, I guess, but I remember when Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting. There's a big meme about the "I have the high ground," because like in the previous movies that didn't mean shit.
Yeah.
And like Anakin just kind of flips over him, and then Obi-Wan's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're right above me. I'm just going to take out your legs here."
I wish at the end of episode 1, Darth Maul had been like, I've got the high ground.
Yeah, that's the...
That would have made that moment the best.
And Darth Maul
Because
hasn't
if that
said
had happened in
anything.
episode 1, you get to episode 3, Obi-Wan's like, I've got the high ground. And you're
Yeah.
like, that doesn't mean shit. Oh, no!
Yeah.
And they should have
Little
shown more
successful
of
victory there is the Empire.
should have shown more of General Grievous.
Oh yeah, General Grievous. He's very cool. That design is great.
I'm alright.
Yeah.
God,
good stuff
remember
in
the
Prequels.
devastation of was it Order 66?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's terrible. And like the music that
Man.
goes along with that is so tragic. That's one of the best. That's one of the best pieces in that. It's called Anakin's Dark Deeds, and it kind of starts when Obi-Wan goes over to Padme's place and starts to say like, "Hey, like I think that like Anakin just like did all this stuff," and like the way that music builds and crescendos into this really tragic end. I mean, it's just oh man, and then yeah, all the music and just the end of that movie is, I mean, is everything. I mean, and the way that I can't remember what it's called, that like the music that's playing behind Obi-Wan and Anakin's fight, but oh, man, it's really good.
Yeah. And then the younglings.
That's the best part.
That's my favorite part. Slaughters all them little bastards.
Because going into this prequel this trilogy of prequels, I'm given the expectation that this Anakin Skywalker character is the baddest motherfucker that ever lived,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
most villainous scum that ever existed.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I have
You
no
don't know
reason
why.
to believe that,
Yeah, you
other
don't
than
know
what
why.
I see in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, yeah, it had to deliver that, and that's part of why I think that movie's so good, is that it's a very believable, like, descent into darkness for Anakin, and, you know, that's the whole question of,
So,
like,
that's an excellent
arguably the biggest
payoff.
question of the prequels is how does Darth Vader become Darth Vader, and it does that.
I mean, if you believe that iconic poster from episode 1, that's the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you guys, this is just a little unrelated, but do you guys remember, sorry.
Real quick, I want to keep talking about the youngins for a second. So, Anakin has been inducted to the Order of the Sith, right?
Yeah.
which has the rule of two that never really gets super fleshed out, but I think is super interesting.
Yeah.
But we hear about it in episode 1, that only 2 exist at any given time, a student and a master.
Mm-hmm.
And so Anakin says, so that only 2 exist, watch me do this. I'm going to clear out the Jedi temple so that only younglings are there. And I'm going to go in there and just slaughter those little shits.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty diabolical. And it makes you say, oh yeah, Darth Vader's a pretty bad guy, huh?
Yeah, so it was...
Tremendous acting.
Yeah.
Anakin... Oh, so Hayden Christensen had a menacing look. It's just... The second movie, he was just really, really... You know, he didn't have a lot to work with, and what he had to work with, he didn't work with it well.
Yeah.
So...
But they did a great job with the way they shot that and the way they costumed him and did all those things to like visually show that descent into
Yeah, he started getting more and more rough
madness.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets like pale and sweaty and his eyes get like
eyes get
red.
crazy, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember when the prequels were announced and like Star Wars was on every pop can? And,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm just thinking back to that time. It was a great time as a kid.
I'm glad that that's...
Because I had watched the original trilogy,
that
and like my dad would marathon the trilogy with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I would watch them on that golden set, that golden box with the trilogy. So,
I'm glad that that's kind of coming back into the culture, like Star Wars everywhere.
Yeah, it's an event again.
Yeah,
definitely. It was on everything. So we talk about how people look at the bad and ignore the good for the prequels, right? Could you say that people look at the good and ignore the bad of the original trilogy?
Almost certainly.
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely have my answer for this. I'd like to see what Luke thinks.
And I don't think they're equal.
Yeah.
But both of those things for sure happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the original trilogy is... It's so hard to wade through your nostalgia biases, because the original trilogy will always have that special place in my heart. I'll go back to being little Corey eating in my grandmother's back room, or the back room of my grandmother's house, as she brings me like crackers and cheese whiz, and like, you can't just separate that from everything else.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, I think that if we're gonna talk about Anakin being a bad actor, again, not that these are the same, because Anakin's worse, but if we're gonna talk about Anakin being a bad actor, we have to talk about Mark Hamill being a bad actor in Episode 4. He is very whiny, and generally just like, you know, not.
I was gonna go to
greatest.
Toshi Station to get some power conversion.
Yeah, that's it right there. You know, and like is like weirdly flat, like in his face acting is always great. You know, like I don't know. So
yeah, Luke wasn't a very interesting character, was he?
I think he gets way more interesting in Return of the Jedi. There's a lot to talk about with Luke in that. Well, and even really he gets more interesting in Empire too, because
I mean,
like,
he did have that training stuff. I guess that gave him some depth.
Yeah.
Dagobah stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all great. You know, but he did what he needed to do. I think Han Solo is like very clearly the interesting male lead in Episode 4, like without question. You know.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a hot take.
I was always drawn to Luke for obvious reasons.
I've got a hot take.
All right, give it to us, Corey. Give us that scorching
I don't see
take.
what was so impressive about I Know.
Oh, because it's like
why
the
is it
right.
cool
It's
not to say
I love you too. Yeah.
Because masculine edgelord shit, man.
That's true, but also it's like this. it's the way he delivers it. You know, like on paper, like that's like kind of really like why? Yeah, but like he delivers it with just the right amount of like I'm Han Solo and I'm arrogant, but like it's got this this layer of vulnerability to it that's like okay, like he really is like he really does love Leia, and like he's trying to like keep this face, you know, this good face in the midst of like the fact that he's about to get frozen in carbonite.
Okay, well the narrative I always hear is like people think he's a pimp for not telling her he loves her, and I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah. Well, again, back to this whole conversation about what people want Star Wars to be and how that can get really toxic. But yeah, and like it's also why like for me, I'm not huge on Han shot first because like that would make him a murderer. And like I don't know
that
if
guy
that's
was
like
going to kill him,
He's not the only guy he ever killed.
and he's a smuggler. He's a
Yeah.
criminal.
but I just think that
I
like
mean, he's not
it
a
doesn't
cold-blooded killer, but he's not going to be afraid to waste to do it if the situation calls for it.
right. And like but I think it's like you know, it's again it's this like oh, Han shot first. The fact that they changed that ruined everything. Again, back to this hyperbolic thing. And also it's like, well, no, like it makes it more of like self-defense. You know, like yeah, he was going to waste this guy and he had to. Like that's just as like okay of an action, I think. Like I don't know why like suddenly that whole movement is ruined because he didn't shoot first. I don't know.
Because it's not as badass to self-defend.
Right, no, exactly. And that's exactly.
I saw
that's
a
why
joke once where like he walks in and the Vader's like, "Oh, would you like to join us to dinner?" And he's, you know, he starts shooting his blaster at Vader. The Vader's like, "You shot first. Why?"
I just also was thinking about Luke's performance. Was like whenever they're done in the trash compactor.
Shut down all!
Yeah.
Shut down all garbage disposal on the detention level! 3PO! Oh no, they're doomed!
Now, C-3PO and
Shut them all
R2-D2,
down.
they are the just 100% always good.
It gets old.
That's a fair thing to say.
I
let's
said
see.
would C-3PO, is C-3PO a Jar Jar that just stuck?
I think they do play some sort of the same role.
Yes, definitely are the same role. When I listen to C-3PO and his bumbling and his goofiness, it's like this. I think he just presents it in a maybe not as annoying way because he doesn't stutter or like Jar Jar does. And...
Yeah, it's a little bit more palatable.
Also,
In Murdo, a known troublemaker is in the vicinity. Track her down and finish her.
wasn't Jar Jar the one who gave power to Palpatine? Isn't that like that's one of the big memes of the prequel?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I actually
think
love that
there
they
was
did
something
that.
about that when they were doing the Darth Jar Jar theory.
Yeah.
When
I do love that he was very instrumental in the rise of Palpatine's power.
I say again,
That's just
force
ridiculous.
the detention area.
brother was a
oh, no.
galactic senator.
Yeah.
But he was kind of like on, like he wasn't supposed to be there. Like he was in place for Padme, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I feel very, very wrong shooting R2-D2 also. that I don't know.
I lost R2.
About that. Yeah. What? Who's shooting it? Oh.
3PO! 3PO! Also, let's
think
talk about
that's
the
another
seventh
thing.
movie.
All right.
Yeah, I was wanting to hear your take on this because I know that you said that you
I
didn't
didn't
necessarily
really
think.
think it was. I thought it was okay. Didn't think it was special because it's the fourth movie. That's all it is. It's a reskin.
Is it?
I mean, the characters are different.
Discuss.
But I mean, it's the same plot.
Is it?
It's like a.
I mean, by the
It's like you know how you have those special.
You
It's
could
like
also-
a reunion episode. It's like, oh hey, look, this is like Star Wars. I remember Star Wars used to be really.
So is it because they blew up the Death Star? Because then Episode 4 and Episode 6 are the
Yeah.
same movie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, yes, they blew up the Death Star, but there's so many things about it that just felt like it was just like they were just piggybacking on nostalgia.
I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I have my thoughts on why it is, but we'll let you keep going.
I've only watched it once when it came out, so my memory is kind of hazy. Let's turn it up. But I do remember my brother and I discussing it at length after we watched it. The characters, like, haven't been really that developed yet. So, it feels more just like a build-up movie.
I mean, it's the first of a trilogy, and you know that's gonna happen. I think that they're developed enough, like for a first movie. You know, like there is, I would say, arguably there is more character development between these characters, well, at least between Finn and Rey, than there is with Luke, Han, and Leia in Episode 4. Is Rey the same, like, from humble beginnings that, like, is the hero's journey that, like, is Luke Skywalker? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey, though.
Yeah, I think that's the hero's journey.
Like,
And
that
that's-
exists outside Star Wars.
Yeah. But like it's paying homage to the fact that like that was a very important thing. Like the hero's journey was a big influence on like the original Star Wars movies. And so you know it's holding to the traditions and being respectful to the past while also like doing things to kind of move forward in the future. Like you have a very, very gray and very distinct bad guy in Kylo Ren. Like there is nobody like Kylo Ren outside of like you could argue maybe Anakin for a while, but like you don't know what the heck's going on, and that's a very cool. Like he's like kind of a wild card, you know. Like you just don't really know. Like it's very impulsive, and that's not something that we've seen before. You know, we have this whole idea, even of the Force. They're starting to set this idea up that, like, you know, and I think they're about to explore this in The Last Jedi in a major way. That, like, the Force is kind of this, like, interesting thing of, like, maybe it's not as black and white as kind of you think it's been.
Well, that's a. I'd like to carry that into discussions about Episode 8, if you would.
But
That is
to your
some
point
theories about that.
about
Han Solo dies. Obi-Wan dies.
Right.
I mean, they're all bumbling about in the Death Star for a while, destroy it at the last second. It just felt very, very similar.
here's why I think they did it, because you have for years people talking about how the prequels are terrible and they're nothing like the originals. And so if you're going to bring back Star Wars, and it's like now there's all sorts of pressure to like say, hey, we're going to bring it back to the originals so that you trust us. So if you want to, I think the blame for it being as similar as it was falls squarely on how much criticism the prequels got. And again, this whole idea that like oh, the prequels are terrible and the only good movies that are Star Wars are the originals. Okay, we need to make one that's just like that so people like can be on board. That's my thought. Is You know,
They
it's
went
gonna
back to
be
safety.
yeah, because they had to because of the like incredible outrage
Oh.
against the prequels.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. It just it felt to me like so similar to the fourth movie. Didn't feel like it was breaking the mold in any unique way. Like I thought, like Finn. I just hope that the eighth movie breaks the mold more, and I can really start to see these characters develop.
From all accounts, it is going to be very different. Daisy Ridley, when they interviewed her, I think at Celebration, you know, they were saying somebody asked a really good question. They're like, "We know that you can't talk to us about the movie, but we do know that like you've been around people who have seen it. Like, what are these people saying, like about their experience?" Which again, I think is like a really cool way to approach that question. And she was like, "Well, they've said, wow, this is different," and she kind of just kept it at that. And
I think they're going to I think they're going to do what the Empire Strikes Back did, and they're just going to shock a generation with something.
yeah,
I don't know what
think
it would
so.
be.
And it's going to be like Empire Strikes Back, and then it's going to be shocking. But I don't think it's going to be like Empire Strikes Back in the way that The Force Awakens was like Episode 4.
No, that's what I'm hoping. It will be its own
Well,
unique thing.
Yeah, like
But
I think
just
they've got the trust of the audience back now. You know, it's like, the audience is with them, and now like, okay, we don't have to prove that like we can make a good Star Wars movie anymore. You know.
Yeah. So the common theory, I guess a lot of people are wondering, you know, Luke Skywalker is going to be evil. And the 8th trailer could give you that impression.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, he said the Jedi need to end. That's a pretty sick thing to
Yeah.
say.
So that would, and that's definitely not a concept new to the
Right.
extended universe for sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to me, but I know it's definitely been done a lot in the extended universe.
Yeah.
The idea of Luke becoming the new bad guy. I've read about theories on Reddit that Luke is actually going to start exploring a new pathway in the Force, which
Kinda
is
like a
like
gray
not the
path?
lawful good, not the chaotic
Yeah.
bad, the neutral
Yeah.
path,
Uh-huh. I think so for
which
sure.
would be really interesting.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I really enjoy the theories that Luke has already been turned a little bit in Return of the Jedi. There's a lot of evidence in my mind that he's already turned, even a little bit there.
But I just don't understand why he would just go completely to the other side. I just don't see the motivation.
Well, it may not. I mean, the dark side of the Force often doesn't need motivation. You know, it's a corrupting force like the Ring and the Fellowship of the Ring. You know, like it's going to corrupt because that's the whole thing that it's trying to do. But yeah, so I'm super interested. I don't think he's going to be all the way bad. I think he's going to be. I agree totally that I think he's going to be neutral. I also think that Rey is going to like not necessarily be good at the end of this. I also don't think that Kylo Ren is going to be necessarily all the way all bad. Because I think that they showed enough of his internal conflict there, before killing Han, that shows that he might not be all the way sold on like this being Darth Vader thing. You know, like he might still have enough good in him where that's going to be a major conflict. And so I'm interested to see how that's going to manifest itself. But we'll see. Can't get here fast enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, when's that coming out?
It's going to be December, probably like December 18th or 17th or something.
This year?
Yeah. Oh man.
Good. Star
I don't know
Wars
if you
is such
guys
a
are
good
watching
movie.
this feed, but there is one Rodian-looking dude that keeps going and activating the droid and then disappearing, and that feels really cheaty to me. I don't know if there's any powers that can let you teleport or turn invisible like that, and he's done it almost every time. So we'll see. So this trench run is like legit. Like when you play as the rebels, like flying through the trench is legitimately difficult. Because you'll have ties on your back, and like there's all these different checkpoints. Like you'll see the list at the top. There's all these different checkpoints that you have to hit, and it's like really hard. I mean, like you can see now, like, oh yeah, like it's really tight corridors, and flying through quickly is very difficult. Oh, I could have been Darth Vader's wingman.
A squad of rebel fighters are heading into the trench. Go after them.
All right, where's the?
Any other thoughts on any of the movies anyone wants to get out?
What's your favorite of the original trilogy?
Rebel fighters incoming.
Probably
we
Empire Strikes Back.
talk more positively. Okay, go a little more critical there for a while. You said Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, I agree. Like I do love the tension, the music, just the dialogue. It's
Yeah.
pacing. It's a really good movie, start to finish, and it's interesting to watch the
So
struggle.
we never talked about Hoth.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Hoth.
yeah.
We are a bit partial to Wampas.
Yeah.
It's Wampa Stampa. and
Wampa
it's really
Stampa all
fun.
day. Yeah. I'm actually come around on Empire Strikes Back. It was my least favorite of the original trilogy, and now I don't know if I have like a favorite or a least favorite. But I definitely appreciate Empire Strikes Back more than I did.
Rebel fighters are diving into
Yeah.
the trench. Neutralize them immediately. Victor 3 is here. The rebels will soon be
What about you, Luke?
behind you.
Huh?
Do you have a favorite of the original trilogy?
Empire.
Oh, Empire. I think mine is Return of the Jedi. Mostly because I love the speeder bike scene. Everything on Endor I love. And I think it has the best like ending sequence. Like that space battle is just phenomenal. The battle on the ground on Endor is really great. And then like you have three like really major conflicts happening at the same time, and that's handled really well. Plus, like this whole idea, like as I've grown and like kind of paid more attention to it and thought about it a little bit more critically, like this idea that like if you watch that with like this idea that like Luke is actually not all the way dark, but like is probably a little bit gray already, and like has a definite like darker tinge to him. It's just super interesting.
I do
I
really
mean, why
like
else
the,
would a person wear all black?
In the Star Wars universe, exactly. Like, I mean, like that's the visual language that we have is that Sith wear black. Like, we don't ever see a Jedi wear all black.
That'd be crazy if they were actually building up to that this whole time.
I think you can make a case for sure.
I do like the point of view, like the switching of the point of views when there's a bunch of battles going on at the same time. You know, there's definitely a lot of, like, people are relying on each other to get done, and there's the tension of, I mean, you know it's going to work out, but still, like, Luke is desperately hoping that he can actually trust his friends, as the Emperor's trying to tell him that he can't. And, the scene where the Darth Vader throws the Emperor over the side, and Luke takes his mask off so he can look at him as Anakin, is really, really good.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember like the showdown at Jabba's, and then I remember that part at the end, but I don't know if I remember the stuff in the middle of Return of the Jedi very well.
That's kind of, I mean, like, there's not much. that's really kind of the main things. You have some like they meet up at the rebel base and they kind of coordinate and they plan. Um, Also, it has Return of the Jedi has the best line in the Star Wars universe. It's a trap. So there's one thing, but yeah, I don't know. I also just like resolutions. I like when things come together, and they're bringing together different plot points and stuff, and that just really hits the nail on the head for me in a good way.
Tear it all down.
Yeah.
He says because he has a thermal detonator.
And even I mean, like such like these really amazing moments, like that conversation between Leia and Han at the end, where like, Leia's like, I think Luke's alive, like I can feel it, and then Han's like, he has the wrong idea, he's like, well, I mean, if you love him, and like just that whole back and forth is really good. Man, so many cool moments.
It's good the first time until you get really uncomfortable about it because you realize why they're having that conversation.
The Jaime and Cersei Skywalker stuff is a little weird.
Well, I don't get that vibe from Luke and Leia. Not in that one. Maybe in Empire.
Not in the fifth one. They actually do kiss. Which is really
So
weird.
we're gonna talk about that dynamic. It's definitely way more present in that movie.
What are you doing there?
But anyways, well, I think I'm gonna end the stream here.
We haven't talked about the games or the extended universe.
Sorry.
KOTOR is the best Star Wars of all time, y'all.
HK-47 for the win. Yeah, and also
Wedge.
Revan is the shit. There's no greater.
well, I mean, technically, most of that legacy extended universe doesn't exist anymore, so
Doesn't
we actually
exist.
don't have anything to talk about. So. No, it's okay.
Bring back Bounty Hunter.
Indeed, but this has been May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Battlefront stream, and I'm glad that it worked out this time and didn't have any weird dark side difficulties. But if you've watched it to this point after the fact, we appreciate you. Hopefully you gained some insight and maybe you had some opinions on some of the things we talked about, and hopefully you enjoyed the action on the screen. Anyways, of course you can find everything at Yeah Brother Gaming on YouTube, and you can follow on Twitter at YeahBrother_. There may be some Yakuza 0 before this night is over, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Luke, are you still playing Too Danganronpa?
Yeah, as soon as I'm done with Persona.
That's true. That's true.
I can't escape its grasp right now, though.
Wait, I guess no. They did loosen the. Papa Atlas gave a little bit of mercy, so we can at least talk. We can definitely talk about Persona, and we can say that word definitely at least probably a minimum of five times. So they don't have to take down the stream. Corey's going to get to The Last of Us. It's going to be wonderful. But anyways, well, until next time, may the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. Look out for Revenge of the 5th.
There we go. I'm going to turn off my targeting computer. Don't worry.